Here are 6 mistakes to avoid when asking for money. Mistake number 1, rushing past discovery. I'm a very numbers-driven person. I like to succeed in things, but it's so important to realize that when you're meeting someone for the first time, it's not always appropriate to ask for money on the quote-unquote first date. The first time that you're interacting with someone, saying, I'm just gonna crank through, I'm gonna talk to 100 people this month, and I can only do that if I ask them all for money immediately. I'm not gonna leave any meeting without asking for money. Now, I do advocate for asking more often than is comfortable or than you're probably used to. However, if you're meeting a prospective donor for the very first time, sometimes it might be appropriate to not rush past the discovery phase. What kind of things do they like to give to? How much do they like to give? In what ways do they like to give? Do they volunteer their time? Do they just give money? What's important to them? If they want to kind of rush through the meeting and saying, well, what's this about? Or tell me how I can help, then you might be able to pivot and transition. But almost always there's a discovery phase where you go back and forth and you really learn about what their philanthropic goals are, the things that excite them, the type of programs that they want to support. We always say the best meetings are 50% talking and 50% listening. The natural tendency, if you're really passionate about your charity, your nonprofit, you're gonna spend as much time talking and pitching and saying how great you are, and this is why we need money, and this is our vision, it's all these things we need to do, and we end up closer to 80% or 90% talking. If you've done your job well, you're gonna talk about your charity and the things that you do, but at least half of that conversation is asking questions. Asking questions to the donor about what kind of impact they have, what kind of things they want to do with their philanthropic goals, future, legacy. All these things are so important. So we try to be at least 50-50 and really focus on that discovery back and forth. Maybe you can move that along in one meeting. Maybe it takes 2 or 3, but just kind of being a good listener, being a good interpersonal communicator, going back and forth and making sure that you're nailing the discovery process before actually making the ask. All right, mistake number 2 is centering the conversation around your budget or your monetary needs instead of their impact. We love to talk about, oh, we need this much money for this. We're trying to raise $6 million, so we need to get at least $500,000 from these donors. And those things are correct. You do want to paint that picture a little bit. But if you're centering around your budget instead of their impact, they start to see dollar signs instead of change in the world. So we kind of have, we'll say this is a brain. This is my best attempt at drawing a brain. You can make fun of me in the comments. I know that this is also not an anatomically correct thing, but we have the kind of left brain and right brain. The left brain, very logical, gonna think about money, think about numbers, all that kind of thing. If we talk about budget, you're gonna keep your donor in kind of this left brain area. They're gonna be thinking about numbers and calculating, and there's no version of them calculating that they walk away with more money. Even if they have a tax donation, we wanna keep them out of the left brain and into the right brain. Now, the right brain is more creative and happy and thinks about impact and the things you want to do for the world and is a little bit more fluid. We want to move them into the right brain, and by doing that, we can kind of connect to the emotional side of people. And instead of them thinking about how much this is going to cost them, they can think about the new future they can paint with their philanthropy. So if we focus on our budget, yes, we want to talk about our needs and how they can help move our organization forward, but we really want to talk about what the donor can do for the world. The thing I like to remember is that people don't give to charities, people give through charities. They're not hoping that this is the donor and then they give money to the charity. Their hope is that that charity does not keep the money. They want the charity immediately to use the money to help people or help animals or help something. We want to do some kind of good in the world. We want the money to flow through the charity as quickly as we can to have the impact that we want. So we don't talk about what it does here. We want to skip to the part where it helps the world. So make sure we're focusing on impact and what that gift is going to do for the world, not what it does for your organization. Mistake number 3 is leaving the ask ambiguous. Now, what we mean by this is not asking for a specific amount by saying, well, how much would you like to donate? Or what would be an appropriate gift size for you? Now, we might want to get some idea about their range by testing some gift amounts, or we've talked about this in other videos, kind of setting the initial parameters of, we're looking for gifts in the $50,000 to $150,000 range and just gauging their reaction. I'm not asking for a gift, but I'm just gonna see if they're like, oh, they cut in right away and say, well, that's not gonna be us. It's like, great, I know that was too high now. But we don't wanna come in and just say, well, how much do you wanna give to the campaign? Because they don't know. They may have some idea about what they can contribute, but they're really looking in most cases for you to take the lead. So instead of, give whatever your heart desires or whatever you think is right, and they're going, you kind of put me in an uncomfortable position here. Just tell me how much. If you ask too high or you ask for an amount that's inappropriate, they're just gonna tell you, say, hey, we'd love to have you consider a gift of $25,000. And you say, yes, this is how much we want. We would like $25,000. And then if they're like, no, that's way too high, and you say, okay, no worries. A lot of our donors choose to pledge that over 3 or 4 years. And they say, no, still a little bit too high. Do you have anything else in this range? We're like, okay, well, what if we did a $10,000 pledge and you had 4 years to pay that off? That's $2,500 a year. And that way I don't have to bother you. I'm not gonna ask you for more money every single year. We're gonna set one amount, $10,000, you pay however you want over the next 4 years. And then I spend the next 4 years only saying thank you. And they're like, great. So you can always negotiate down to their ceiling. You're never gonna offend anybody by flattering them, by saying they have a lot of money or they have the ability to give these big gifts. And we're always really careful to not have an ambiguous ask. We always end these conversations with a very specific and so-and-so, Mr. Smith, we'd love to have you consider a blank for blank. Hey, thanks for checking out our video. If you're getting value out of this but would like something more personalized, you can book 30 minutes with one of our experts to see if you qualify for our support services. Link below in the description. All right, mistake number 4. I love the imagery or metaphor, I don't know if this is metaphor, drowning story in statistics. I just, the way that those words hit, I really like a lot. So if you have a bunch of stats and you're really excited, like, oh, there's this many people who need access to equitable healthcare and we're able to intervene for 56% of them, but if we build a facility that's $250,000 that expanded onto this thing, we'll increase it to 64%. It's like, I have a hard time picturing 64% of a person. That doesn't help me. It'd be much more impactful for me to tell the story about one person. So instead of saying numbers and percentages and all of this, we just have one person who was sad for some reason because they didn't have access to healthcare or they didn't have access to food or whatever your mission is. And we were able to intervene and now they're happy. And this singular person, one person, way more effective than all the numbers in the world. Now, there's a place for both, of course. You can talk about both of these things, but if you're going to tell a story, don't talk about, oh, and he's just like 500 other people that are doing this, and he's just the 1% of this. It's tell one impactful story and then make the ask. That's highly effective. It's much better than statistics. Maybe you frame the top of your pitch with some statistics. You talk about, hey, the reason we're having this conversation today is we're trying to tackle XYZ problem in our community, and you can frame it with like 1 or 2 numbers so people just get an idea of scope. Then move right into an example of how you've helped someone in the past and kind of present this ideal future of how you plan to help more people in the future. But you don't want to sour your story by lots of numbers and again, pushing people into that math brain side. I know that literally the left and right brain don't have like creativity on one side and numbers on the other, but just for the sake of the argument, we want to avoid those numbers and that concrete thinking, more into the emotional, empathetic type thinking. Mistake number 5, treating every donor the same. This is a mistake I made also a lot in my early career. I like the idea that I can build this amazing pitch where I know exactly what I say, I know my inflections, I know the order that I'm going to say it in, and I have kind of my speech dialed. I sit down with the donor, I start with this, I move into this really touching story that hopefully they cry and they feel something, and then I go right into the ask. And this is kind of my flow, and I'm really dialed on it because I've done it hundreds of times. I like conceptually that can exist. Like the idea that I can do that and I can achieve this is great. Unfortunately, it's a lot more effective to be able to think on your feet and have components of your pitch that are kind of always the same, but being ready to pivot and knowing that not every ask is going to be the same. Here's kind of a general framework that you can start with, and it gives you a chance to move. So I like to sit down and clarify why I'm there. The reason I wanted to sit down today is because I want to talk to you about our new blank, blank, and blank program, but if I want to have some sort of pleasantries, I can do that first. After we've had some pleasantries and caught up a little bit, I talk about the problem, I talk about our goal or how much we're trying to spend or raise, and then I'm going to talk about the new future or solution. For example, we're an animal shelter. The problem is we only have 14 kennels. On average, we have 26 pets, 26 dogs that we need. We need to buy 30 more kennels. The solution in the future, we will always have a kennel for every stray dog that needs our help. It's a very basic example. I don't know if that's how a campaign would necessarily work, but I'm just trying to make it really simple. Here's kind of why we're looking to expand our services, expand what we're trying to do. Here's the issue that we have, here's the money that we need, here's the solution. But we can have all kinds of jumping around depending on questions that they ask. And again, we go back to that beginning where we have 50-50, where if I'm spending half the time talking and half the time listening, I know that I'm doing this about right. One question in this particular scenario that I could ask is, I want to get a sense, have you ever supported an animal shelter in the past? If so, what kind of impact did you hope you had? Oh, you did? How did they spend that money? You can ask anything about their past giving to other institutions, to your current organization, certainly if they're a donor to your organization. One of my favorite questions is, hey, you gave that $1,000 last year. What kind of impact did you hope that had on the organization? They'll tell you, well, I hope that you spend it on this and this. Well, we did spend it on that, and here's some of the cool things we're gonna do. And in fact, one of the things we're trying to do next year is, and you jump right back into the pipeline and work toward the solution. After you've kind of talked about that, then you can move into the ask and then be quiet. We wanna always end with the number. We wanna talk about the number. Again, we're not gonna pick a number out of the air. We're gonna do a little bit of research, but we wanna present a specific number to them and then hopefully see what their reaction is and just go from there. You're gonna get roughly a third of the time yes, a third of the time like maybe or not right now, or that's not quite the right fit, or something between yes and no, or about a third of the time you're gonna get a no. And that's totally okay because you have enough total asks to build in across all three of those. So again, don't wanna treat every donor the same. You don't wanna have sort of a general framework. Here's one of the ones that I work from, but you wanna have this fluidity to the conversation and treat them like a human, not just the next person that you're gonna talk to and trick into a gift somehow. All right, the sixth and final mistake is letting the relationship go cold after one meeting. Now, if this is a brand new person who's not supported you in the past or has barely been involved, we have good research to show that it's gonna take an average of 5 to 7 interactions before they consider even giving for the first time. So if they've gotten mail from you once and they attended an event as a guest and you got their name from that guest list and you took them out to coffee, and they don't seem super interested in giving right now, but they're loosely interested in learning more, and you say, they don't want to give, I'm better off pursuing somebody else who's more engaged. Well, that was still only about half the interactions that you need before you can get to the point where you can ask them for a proper gift. So you don't have to go right into the ask at this point, and you don't have to let it go cold. You do have kind of a shelf life of, I always just want to have some sort of next step in mind. So here's just like the first thing that I would always try to do. So say I'm taking someone out to coffee. I don't want to leave that meeting of like, oh yeah, we'll be in touch. We'll send you something, or we'll catch up with you later. That's pretty ambiguous. It's pretty vague. What I want to do instead is saying, hey, we have this donor event on the 27th. Do you want to come by and see some of this? Or do you want to take a tour of our facilities? Or do you want to come by my office and we can talk about this, this, and this? But whatever ends that interaction, we want to have some sort of next thing in mind so that the relationship doesn't ever go cold. There's always a next step. Say that next step is a gift. Say you do get a gift. We still don't want the relationship to go cold after the one meeting. Say you were like, I crushed it. I met someone for the first time. I told them a story and they walked away by giving us a check immediately. We still want to have a next step / stewardship in mind so that we're always moving on to the next thing. Other easy things that you can do is you can do a follow-up email, handwritten note or card, text, social media invite, and of course, best is a call. But always have something in the pipeline. Again, you're not always gonna get a yes on the first date, and if they seem even vaguely interested, you can give them different options for, hey, maybe you don't want to give money, but we have a volunteer program, or we don't have a good volunteer program or a good opportunity for you right now. However, we can put you in the pipeline to help connect us to other people. One of the questions that if I get a total bust on is, sounds like this is not really a good fit for you, or this is not a charity that's necessarily within your wheelhouse. Who do you know that you could connect me to? Who's the one person you could connect me to that might have a lot of interest in a program like this? And sometimes they'll still say, I don't know anybody, but generally if they've taken the meeting, if they've agreed to coffee, they want to be helpful. They're genuine. They just like, you kind of talk through what you want to do. Not exactly the philanthropy that I want right now. And they'll connect you to one other person and you still get something out of it. So whether you get a yes, no, or maybe you don't want the relationship to totally go cold after just one meeting and you want to try to push into the next thing, whatever that might be. All right, hopefully you have not made one of those 6 mistakes. I certainly have, but hopefully this video you won't have to make them again. If you want additional information on how to move people through the fundraising continuum, you can keyword search on Google, you can head over to our website. And of course, if you want to chat with one of our professionals to see if we can help you directly, you can fill out that Let's Chat form and we'll see you over there. See you in the next video.